everyone, welcome. Welcome to the first ever Ignite Learning Twin Ports event. I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited that you are all here to share this evening with us. My name is Tammy Wilkins. I'm the Innovation Coordinator for the Duluth Public Schools. I'm also the host of this wonderful event. As you know, any event does not happen on its own. There are many people involved and many people who put in hours of hard work. So I have a few thank yous to run through here. First, I'd like to thank our Superintendent, Bill Gronseth, for his wonderful support of Ignite Learning and his never-ending promotional chutzpah, perhaps, for trying to get people here. Thank you very much, Bill. We really appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Brenda Vathauer for allowing us to use this beautiful auditorium, and Deb Devaney, who is the music teacher here, who helped us with the lights and the microphones and the sounds and all of that, so that you can hear us and see us, and we can't see you. I'd also like to thank Nick Jacobs up in the sound booth. Thank you, Nick, for keeping the lights up and the lights down and the sound up. Thanks, Nick. And then a special thank you to Chrissy Valento, who is the art teacher here at Lincoln Park Middle School. She and her art club students made this awesome banner here to my left. Thank you to them. And I couldn't have done any of this without the awesome help of my innovation team. Jess, Paul, Danielle, you guys are awesome. You're the best. Thanks. How many of you have seen or watched a TED Talk before? Sweet. If you like TED Talks, you're going to love Ignite Learning. Even though most of our speakers today are teachers or have some tie to education, the focus tonight is on learning. We all know that learning happens in classrooms, but the kind of learning that you're going to hear about tonight is the kind of learning that happens from experience. It's the kind of learning that happens when you discover your passion and you'll do anything to improve your skills. It's the kind of learning that makes you want to move up to the next level in whatever it is that you're trying to do. When I approached all of the speakers for tonight, I asked them to consider 3 questions as they prepared their talk. Number 1, what did you learn? Number 2, how did you learn it? And number 3, how did learning that thing impact your life? The 11 people we have speaking tonight have way more interesting things to say than me, so I'm going to stop and we're going to get started. Our first speaker is currently the Duluth Public Schools Curriculum Director. He also has experience as a teacher and a principal. Although his childhood dream was to become a pitcher for a professional baseball team, the lure of impacting the lives of kids drew him to education. Here to share his talk called Learning by Doing, with some help from others, please welcome Dr. Mike Cary.
All right, good evening. First off, I just want to say thank you to Tammy for inviting me to be a part of this. It was probably 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, Tammy came and said, "Hey Mike, I've got this idea. And here's what I want it to be, but I don't have anybody to talk yet." She goes, "Would you do it?" And I kind of said, "Well, can I set the bar really low?" And she said, "Yeah, sure, fine." I said, "All right, I'll be happy to do it." And so she kind of explained what the intent of the evening was, where we discuss learning by doing or learning outside of a formal school setting. And I thought about it for about 30 seconds, and I said, "I already know what I'll do. I got it." And so what I'm here to talk to you about tonight is kind of my personal journey where I learned something on my own as an adult. It's nothing spectacular, it's nothing amazing, but I think you'll see that people can learn things outside of a formal education setting if they have a few things going. One is that they have kind of a particular interest or motivation in learning whatever it is they want to learn. 2, if they have access to the resources that they need to learn that thing. And 3, if they have a little help from others. And so most of you, I think personally, and I've met through work, are educators, and at some point in your career you probably took a child psychology or developmental psychology course to get your credentials. And if you did that, you'll remember this guy named Lev Vygotsky. He was actually a psychologist And one of his theories was essentially that people can learn things on their own, but they do a better job of learning, or they're more proficient when they have a little help from somebody who understands that thing a little bit better than they do. And so what I'm going to do tonight is tell you about a personal interest I took, the help that I got from others through technology and other resources, and how I actually leveraged that learning opportunity and interest into kind of a side freelance career where I actually made a little money doing it. So to start off, this owl that you see up there started the whole thing. So it was the summer, early fall after I got married. And as one of our wedding gifts, my wife and I got this kind of little point and shoot camera. And for those of you who aren't camera people, the point and shoot camera isn't the one with the big fancy interchangeable lenses. It's the little thing with the little cheesy lens that kind of zooms in and out a little bit. And it was my first ever real exposure to photography. And so I started taking pictures here and there, but really, I wasn't that into it. Until one day I was driving back to Duluth from west central Minnesota, and in this particular year, there happened to be what they called an eruption of owls. And for those of you who aren't birders in the room, an eruption is when you have an unusually large number of owls that come down from their normal feeding grounds, and they are kind of overpopulated in an area in search of their prey. I know that, my biology's I've got a biology background. But anyway, so there's all these owls around all of a sudden. And one day on this drive back to Duluth, there happens to be one sitting on the fence post, and I happen to have my camera sitting next to me. And I looked at my wife and I was like, pull over, pull over. And so she pulls over quick and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, there's an owl. I was like, so what? I said, I'm gonna go take its picture. Why? I'm like, I don't know, I'm just gonna do it. And so I get out, and probably looking really creepy, I kind of really slowly start to kind of nonchalantly shuffle my way towards this owl, because my tiny little camera had almost no zoom, and I knew I wasn't gonna get a good picture unless I got really close. Now, I'm sure I was probably breaking a few rules or laws around approaching wildlife in this situation, but I didn't think about it at the time. And I just crept closer and closer and closer until this owl was about 10 feet away from me. I mean, if I wanted to, I probably could have jumped and just about grabbed it. And I got that picture. Now, that's not the most amazing picture in the world, but it was the coolest picture I'd ever taken in my life. It was like by far my sweetest ever photograph. And when I saw that thing pop up on my computer when I downloaded it, I was like hooked. I was like, this is awesome. This is something I have to do. So I started walking around the woods of Duluth and anywhere where I could find things, taking pictures. And after a while, I kind of realized, you know, I don't know much about doing this. And my stuff really isn't turning out to be very good. And most of my pictures don't even look that good. And I'm like, I think I need to learn a little something about this. And I'm really not sure if the equipment I have is up to par. So luckily, I grew up in the digital age where, you know, internet is available, and I happen to have a computer at home. And I found, by chance, a website. My dad actually called me up one day. We were talking about my interest in photography, and I said, yeah, you know, I've been taking pictures and running around Duluth. And he goes, you know, there's this website I go to that has all of these fishing forums, because he's a fisherman. And, you know, it's where I go to find out whether or not the fish are biting across the state. I was like, okay, Dad, not making the connection here. Help me out. What's this got to do with photography? He goes, well, they've got this forum. There's this forum, they have these outdoor interest forums, and if you go there, there's actually one on photography. And there's some guys that are really good. Like, he goes, I've seen some really, really nice stuff. I think you should go there and you might learn a thing or two. So I said, okay, send me the address, and he emails me a link, and I land on this site. And there happens to be a forum for photographers or people interested in it. And there's all these guys from across the state who are posting their photos and sharing where they took them and sharing information about the equipment they used. And they're providing each other feedback and critique about, you know, what they like about one another's photos or how they felt the person could have improved it. And so I kind of lurked on that site for a while. For those of you who don't know what lurkers are, it means I just kind of watched and I didn't really participate. And finally, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to make a login. I'm going to try this myself. So I create my login and I start posting my own photos. You know, some of them good, some of them not so good. And the guys start saying, you know, hey, I like this one, or I don't like that one, or I like what you did here. Your composition in this one could have been improved in this way. And we started talking about gear and all the other things that you need to learn more about if you're going to be a good photographer. And so over the years, I spent an inordinate amount of time on this. My wife often complained that she'd lost her husband, but I was really hooked. I mean, I was really interested. And then I found other helpful websites, like this camera equipment review site. I was a Canon guy. I'd gotten into Canon photo equipment, and so I found a great website from a guy who's a highly professional photographer, and he had all these lens tests and talked about all the different pros and cons of the different equipment that was out there. So I learned a huge amount over the course of a couple of years just from these websites. And then over time, I developed strong enough relationships from some of the guys that I met on this site that we'd actually meet at different places across the state with our gear, and we'd go out and take pictures together. And then we'd share them when we got home online and talk about, you know, hey, yeah, I saw when you got that shot. I loved how you did that. And it was a great kind of feedback opportunity to learn more about your craft. And so over time, through trial and error and just practice, I actually got good enough at photography to take some fairly decent pictures. And then at one point I thought, you know, I've seen my stuff. I've seen stuff that's in magazines. I wonder if I could make some money doing this. And so I picked up some other skills. I learned how to make my own website, and I built a website so that I could post my photos online and share those with photo editors of magazines across the country and across the state. And I also learned Photoshop, kind of self-taught Photoshop user, so that I could touch up and improve my photos digitally. And so over the years and over the learning, I started to kind of accrue a body of work. And before I knew it, I got some photo editors who were actually interested in some of my stuff. And here and there, a couple $100 at a time, I was selling pictures to magazines and to other publications, or selling pictures to individuals who just liked the image and wanted one for their wall. And I never made enough money at it to really make a living off of it, but it helped fuel my hobby, and basically it was an opportunity to buy more equipment. My wife would never complain, because even though a lens was $1,000, if I made the $1,000 with my camera to buy it in the first place, hey, right? It was a break-even proposition. So I essentially had my own self-funding hobby that I always kind of deluded myself and said, yeah, maybe I'll do it professionally someday. Education took over in my life, and I never got to this point, and I'm happy that that's the case. But the point I'm trying to make is that if somebody with some interest, some access to the proper resources to be able to get the materials they need, and with a little advice and help from other people, you can pretty much learn to be good at just about anything. And actually good enough at it where you might make a little bit of money doing it. And so I share that because as educators, I think oftentimes we get caught in this thought process where we have to disseminate information to people, that we have to sit there and tell them how things are supposed to be. But the truth is I don't think that that's really necessary. I think if as educators we could motivate kids to be interested enough in something and then provide them with the tools and just a little bit of guidance when they need it, they'll figure this stuff out on their own, and they'll be wildly engaged in it. I cannot tell you the hundreds or thousands of hours I've put into this, and nobody ever forced me to do it. Nobody told me I should, and nobody ever even asked me to. I just did it because the interest was there and I had the recipe that I needed to move forward. Now, somebody might say, yeah, Mike, you know, that's fine and dandy, you're an adult, right? I've got a doctorate degree, I went through like 900 years of formal schooling, right? You learned the skills you needed along the way to be able to do this on your own. Well, I'm going to make a very quick argument in closing, is that you don't have to be an adult for this to work for you. And I'm going to use the story of my son, who, if he didn't have hockey tonight, I was going to drag him here and embarrass the heck out of him. Right now he's 7 years old. He's actually a first grader at Lowell. But I'm going to tell you a story about when he was a 5-year-old in preschool, and then another story when he was a kindergartner. So on the left, you'll see a picture of a video game called Skyrim. I kind of hate to admit it because, in my job, I'm supposed to be kind of a serious, organizational leader, but I really like video games. And I don't think they're too childish, right? And so I've got this game Skyrim that I used to like to play. I don't play it anymore, but I used to play it a lot. And the premise of the game is that you're this kind of ancient warrior, and you're running around through a wild land, kind of hacking and slashing and brutally killing your way throughout. Really good content for a 5-year-old. And so my son, over time, kind of walks through and sees me playing this thing. And one day, when I walk out of the room, I come back a little while later, and here he's found the icon, he's clicked on it, and he's got my character open, and he's running around. And he's watched me do it enough that he's actually figured out, the game controls. And he starts playing it, and whenever you engage a character, like you see here on the screen, you push a button, and there are these options in words that come up for you to choose what you want the dialogue with them to be about. And my son goes, "Daddy, Daddy, what's this say?" And so the first time I humor him and I say, well, if you click on the top one, it says this. If you click on the next one, it says this. If you click on the bottom one, it says this. You choose. And so he does, and he follows the verbal dialogue that follows auditorily. And then another one of those dialogue boxes pops up. And he goes, "Daddy, now which one?" And I go, "Devin, if you want to do this, you're going to have to learn how to read. Because I can't stand over your shoulder and read this to you all night long." And really, I was just trying to get away, right? I didn't really think my 5-year-old preschooler was going to learn how to read. I just thought, I don't want to do this. I got other things to do. I want to get out of here. And lo and behold, over the course of about the next 3 to 4 months, he took a much higher interest in the work we were doing around learning his letter sounds and reading his early reader books. And before he actually went to kindergarten, he taught himself how to read. And he said, "Daddy, hey, I can play the game now." And that's when it clicked for me. That was the whole reason he was learning how to read, is because I'd given him motivation and he had an interest to do something. So he taught himself how to do it with a little bit of help from us, right? The second story is then Minecraft. I've never played Minecraft. I know nothing about it. I don't have a clue what it's about, other than I watch people just put blocks together all day. I don't know. I don't see the interest. Sorry if you're a Minecraft lover. But my son wanted to get it, so I'm like, all right, seems harmless enough. It's a heck of a lot better than Skyrim. I'll buy you Minecraft. So I buy a Minecraft, and he's like, "Daddy, how do you do this?" "I don't know. Your game, figure it out. I have no idea how to do it." And he keep asking me, "Daddy, how do you build this? How do you build that?" I go, "I don't know, kid. You've played it more than I have. You worry about it." So as a kindergartner, I'd come home, and every once in a while on an iPad or a computer, I'd find these weird misspelled search queries on my web engines. I'd go into Safari or I'd go into Google, and there'd be this, "how to build an Ender portal." I'm like, what's an Ender portal? And it's half these words are misspelled. But lo and behold, there'd be a YouTube video down below on how to build an Ender portal. And finally I figured it out. My kid has figured out that if he types a search query into a search engine, he can actually go to YouTube and find the information he needs. And so I go and find him like, "Devin, what's this?" "Well, Daddy, I needed to figure out how to build an Ender portal." And I go, "Well, what did you do?" He goes, "We talk about it at school. I knew they'd have videos on YouTube. I just had to figure out how to search for it." All right, that's a 6-year-old kid, right? And he's not extraordinary. I'm not trying to paint him as an extraordinary. We got a kid here tonight who I think went to a national spelling bee. I mean, that kid's way more extraordinary than my son. My son is not an extraordinary child. What I'm trying to point out is that kids can do this. If properly motivated, if given the tools, they can actually seek out their own information and learn for themselves. And so I just want us to think about that, because I know a lot of us are educators. How do you get kids interested enough in something and give them the tools so that they'll learn for themselves? Because if they choose to do it themselves, they're going to put a lot more time and a lot more energy into it than if we tell them to do it and it's good for them. Thank you.